We are off. Welcome back to the show, Reuben Major, and welcome to the show, Andrew Jameson.
Thank you.
And thanks for having me back.
Yeah, my absolute pleasure, guys. The Half a Dozen Hospitality podcast has kind of taken a bit of a different, I guess it's pivoted a bit and not too uncommon from what's going on right now in the industry and everyone kind of being forced to pivot. And obviously, Reuben and I, you and I know each other quite well. We've chatted about business and personal life over the past few years. Andrew and I, you and I have just met literally
That's right.
35 seconds ago.
Yeah.
But we'll start with Reuben. For those people that maybe either didn't hear your first podcast on this podcast, or maybe don't know where you're at today, fill people in on like who you are, what you do, why you do what you do. Just give some context to the listeners.
Sure. So I'm a chef by trade. I've been in the restaurant business for 25 years. And I have two restaurants I'm partners in and the operating director of. One is Havana over on Commercial Drive, which we bought about 2.5 years ago. And then the other one is Bellegarde Kitchen over in Railtown. Bellegarde is in the Settlement Building, which also houses Vancouver Urban Winery and Postmark Brewing, which is transitioning into Settlement Brewing. And what else? Why do I do what I do? Is that part of the question?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I guess, since I was 18, hospitality has been what I've been doing, and I love it. I've sort of just done every little piece of it along the way, and here I am with a couple of restaurants in this challenging time, which I think is what we're about to really dig into.
Yeah, definitely. Andrew, fill myself and the listeners in.
Yeah.
Kind of your story, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah. Grew up in Vancouver. We opened the Mackenzie Room 5 years ago. I kind of grew up through high school and into university, kind of paid my way through both those experiences through restaurants, and as many of us do, you kind of get hooked. And I moved to Toronto for about 10 years, and that's kind of where I feel like I cut my teeth in the industry. Ran a few rooms out there, moved back to Vancouver in 2013, and decided it was time to kind of put the proverbial flag in the ground, and kind of got some capital together, and we opened the Mackenzie Room in July of 2015, and right around the corner from Bellegarde, actually, down on Powell Street in the downtown east side.
Yeah, so inform me kind of how you guys are you guys friends just through the industry, just because you're kind of like geographical neighbors? Like, where does this friendship, how did it start, and what does it look like today?
Yeah, I think that's kind of how it began. Reuben lives in the downtown east side, as right around the corner from his restaurant, and we he knocked on our door kind of after a shift, early days, like probably a few weeks after we opened, and him and his wife came in and sat at the bar, and we chatted, and that was kind of the seedling of, I guess, of the relationship. And he's gone on to become good friends of the restaurant, as well as one of my business partners, Antonio Keon, who runs our operations, as well as our chef Sean Reeve. And he's been, in the neighborhood that we're in, it's important to have allies in a common interest in the betterment of hospitality in the downtown east side. So we've kind of created a voice with one another around driving the downtown east side as a culinary destination in Vancouver.
Yeah, I like that. And one thing I find interesting about that, and one thing I think that's a positive and maybe a bit of a negative, and we'll touch on kind of what that looks like today with what's going on, but it's interesting when you look at just the geography of cities and communities and how it lays out, and how you can kind of create your own little silos a bit, which can be, again, positive or negative. But
Sure.
It's nice to see that you guys have kind of blossomed a bit of a relationship, and I'm sure at times have like batted around ideas and shared kind of wins and losses, good stories and bad stories. But let's segue into that a bit about what our current reality looks like in this
Sure.
space. Because I know for me, that's really my motivation with these podcasts now that I'm doing, is to allow for people like you guys and others like you, men and women from the industry, to come on, share their story, and give more context. And the blessing we have with a podcast like this and a platform like this is that not everyone listening right now is a foodie or someone in restaurants or someone that's works. This is a general population. And I feel like this is a time where we can really help educate and get people on the level and let them know, like, this is what's actually happening with us and our businesses. So Reuben, if you can kind of speak to and give some context to what's been happening for you, say, in the last 4 weeks. So what was different Wednesday 4 weeks ago, and what does your Wednesday now look like?
The timeline is, I mean, it's relatively short in the whole scheme of things. You know, if you go back to sort of mid-March, like the week of what would be like maybe March 9th or something like that, you know, as business as usual, we were kind of hearing about things kind of blowing up in other countries, and we hadn't really adapted yet in our city. And as that, or our country for that matter, and as that week progressed, things started to kind of be illuminated a little bit. And I remember, you know, Friday and Saturday of that week, so that we're talking like the 14th and 15th of March, things were, I guess Friday would have been it was Friday the 13th. Yeah. So Friday the 13th, the 14th and 15th of March, it was kind of like a normal weekend. The weather was good. Restaurants were busy. And then as sort of Sunday started to roll around, things started to shift a little bit. It was like everybody's really starting to talk about coronavirus. And I remember particularly because I was with my wife over on the North Shore, and we had a beer at one of the breweries on Brewery Row there. And, you know, people were kind of talking about it, but everybody was still sort of acting the same. And it was almost like everybody was blowing off their last day of steam. And then Monday the 16th was like a different ballgame. And I actually happened to be at a meeting at the city with a couple of city councilors. There was, you know, another 60 restaurateurs on a Zoom call, maybe about 10 or 12 of us in a boardroom. And, you know, the conversation was kind of, Vancouver Coastal Health was on the line. You know, it was just everybody was sort of talking about what our next step should be. And there was a few of us that had a sense at that time that we needed to make a decision about whether we were actually going to stay in business as we knew it, or we were going to decide to shut down, because it felt all of a sudden like the right thing to do to keep our guests and our people safe. And so I actually expected that day to hear from the federal government that, you know, we were going to get mandated to shut down as restaurants, you know, knowing that everybody was so close within them and that sort of thing. That didn't happen. Then there was a provincial government announcement. It didn't happen then. And so now we were at the city, and I was expecting to hear it then. And so, you know, there was this discussion about what we should be doing, and that the decision was being left in the hands of the operators, which was kind of a tough spot for everybody to be in, because on one hand, we know it's our livelihood to be open and trying to make money, but at the same time, it's our responsibility to make sure we take care of our guests and our people. And so I know for us, and I think you guys did the same thing on that day, it was time just for us to shut down. And so we were open that day for lunch, but both the restaurants were super slow. And then as soon as that meeting at the city was over, I let everybody know that we're shutting down, and that was it. So, you know, it was like a very pivotal day. So, you know, that's March 16th. At that time, we thought, you know what, let's do the right thing for a couple of weeks, tighten things up. Everybody will get on board, and, you know, we'll be back in action. Like, my announcement to my team that day was that we plan to be back open April 1st. And that didn't seem silly at the time. Like, in retrospect, I thought, God, this makes perfect sense. And and then just things continued to evolve, and we started to realize that, you know, things were more serious, and we needed to take a longer look at this. And so, you know, now that we moved to where we're at today, we're looking at, you know, how much longer is it going to be? Could it be another couple of months? Like, you know, what sort of boat are we in? And, you know, many of us, you're seeing probably through social media how all kinds of restaurant businesses have totally changed. They've pivoted and done completely different things. Some places are, treating themselves like grocery stores. These guys at Mackenzie Room and St. Mercy launched an amazing platform called Staff Meal, and we jumped on board with them sort of in coalition and because we loved the idea and the initiative. And so that's what we're working in lockstep with these guys on a day-to-day basis to try and get affordable, healthy food to people that need it, and also give people an opportunity that maybe aren't hit hard by this. There's lots of people that still their work is normal and maybe they work from home and have a regular income and that sort of thing, but they want to give back. And so the platform that these guys launched, Staff Meal, gives people a real opportunity to do that. I feel like I just rambled on for 5 straight minutes there, so I'm gonna.
No, that was great. I appreciate that, and that's again what I'm wanting to achieve, at least for a bit of this, is just context. People understand how dramatically things change, and it did for. This is something that I find so unique about what we're all experiencing is we're all experiencing this. This is a global thing, so there isn't anyone that isn't impacted by this. However, I do feel that our industry, the hospitality industry, was probably the first one to really feel the pinch, and probably the one that could suffer the most from this pandemic. So before I move further, Andrew, please articulate kind of, again, how a Wednesday, say 4 weeks ago, looks different from Wednesday today.
Yeah, I mean, it was deny till you die, right? Like we went into the work week. We kind of run our numbers kind of Monday to Sunday. So we kind of opened the Monday and things were looking strong. We actually just came out of a full restaurant opening, a new brand for us called St. Mercy up on Fraser Street in mid-January. So we were just kind of guns blazing, just kind of power through. It's hard to imagine when you're running a business day to day, that kind of cash flow drying up. And so I kind of put it out of my mind as much as I could moving forward. And we went into the weekend, and I was a little trepidatious, and I was kind of extra. It's hard because it was a time where you were aware that social distancing was appropriate, but you also wanted to support this industry that we love so much. So my wife and I actually spent the better part of Saturday visiting some of our favorite restaurants, and then on the Sunday, my staff and I, my business partner Sean and Antonio and Cody, our general manager at St. Mercy, and Bailey, our general manager at Mackenzie Room, we kind of did a blitz around town and kind of went out and saw people, and there were a lot of power handshakes and like, we're not going to let this get to us, and fight the good fight. And we kind of came out of the night like pretty optimistic, as much as the numbers kind of dried up into Sunday service. We noticed, we finished with a bottle of wine at St. Mercy that evening, and by the time 9:30 rolled around, there was maybe 4 or 5 tables left, and this, which was very uncommon for what we'd been doing previously. Mm-hmm. Monday morning, we knew about this meeting at City Hall. We had a meeting down at the Mackenzie Room, and Antonio and Reuben were actually texting back and forth through the meeting. One thing that I was kind of waiting for, and I think Reuben kind of touched on this, was this mandate from the federal government and or provincial government. But when anybody goes into business, typically when you're offered an insurance package, you're offered what is called business interruption insurance. This is something where if your business is interrupted due to a reason outside of your own control, a car drives through the frontage of your storefront, or in this case, if you're mandated by a governing body to stop work, this would be a policy that would be in play in many scenarios for a lot of coverages around town. This, of course, was not the case, and we were kind of asked to do the right thing at a time where we were, faced with really, endangering the public, and ethically we had to make a choice around how we were going to, run our business. And we chose, shortly before lunchtime, I think that day, that we would be closing our doors for the foreseeable future until the kind of fog lifted, so to say. So it was a tough moment, and it was one that we came to solemnly, but we put out the calls right away, and most of the staff was understanding and aware, certainly aware of what was happening in around the globe. And I guess to some extent, maybe not surprised. Everyone was pretty nervous, I think, at the time, and obviously still is. So yeah, it was, that gust of wind kind of goes out of your sails, and then the boat stops moving, and then you're kind of left to look around, kind of wondering what's next. And that's where we kind of moved forward from at that point.
Give the listeners, if you guys both can, or maybe just one of you, and either one of you can field this question, but there are a lot of businesses, restaurants, retail, online, whatever it is, that maybe just opened up like you guys did at, say, Mercy
Right.
in January. Is that fundamentally, in your opinions, any different from, say, someone like a Bellegarde that's been open a little bit longer, or a Havana that's been there for eons? Fundamentally, is that any different? Are you guys more vulnerable at, say, Mercy, because it is such a brand new lease, a brand new concept?
Yeah.
Brand?
Yeah. Reuben, do you mind if I take that one?
Yeah, please.
Sweet, man. Yeah, I think there's a vulnerability, something that's going around in talk right now with the federal support around business, is this wage subsidy up to 75% of your on-staff payroll can be covered by the subsidy, and they're asking businesses to kind of submit their payroll or their earnings from last year's numbers. So year over year, if you're down 30% or more, you'll be eligible. Well, we've been in business for 8 weeks. That certainly puts us at risk. I'm hoping to hear more news on the stipulations around that. Furthermore, yeah, we're a new brand. We're a new brand in the city. Anytime you're starting a business, there's a lot of, you kind of go in with one expectation and often come out with a little bit of circumspection and adjust accordingly. And we were fortunate that we kind of hit the ground running in January, and we were really confident in our product, and even then there was a lot of questions around, how do you let somebody go that you'd hired 8 weeks prior, that you're not really confident in their financial security, and just say, I'm sorry, we don't have work for you anymore. It's a tough position to be in. And furthermore, when guests around the city, we start to make headway in introducing ourselves to the neighborhood, and then the music goes off, and we're left to kind of start repositioning ourselves in the market.
Mm-hmm. So Reuben, for you guys, again, I just think context is so important here for myself and for the listeners. Let's say, for example, Havana. What is the reality? Give us a timeline of, if things don't change, things stay the same in regards to social distancing, the federal government, provincial government saying what they're saying right now, how long could you see this lasting? And we'll get into, again, staff meal. We'll get into other things you can do as far as offering provisions to kind of lessen that pain a bit. But what is the framework of time you actually can see this working in? When is enough is enough?
The conversation that I've been having with my teams is, when it first happened, we sort of looked out a couple weeks and we thought, we can weather this storm. We can do a few things. We don't need to necessarily, completely change our business, because we'll be back up and running in a couple of weeks. We'll do some takeout, whatever. Now we're talking about, let's imagine ourselves on June 1st or July 1st. And imagine, what we've seen in the last 3 weeks on as far as how the consumer sort of treats us, what the consumer is looking for, how their actions have changed in just 3 weeks. And if we can take that trajectory and try and put ourselves on, in June 1st or July 1st, and imagine what the customer is going to be after at that time, and then work our way back and make sure that we're prepared along that path to sort of, be there in support and be there in a way where, our communities can look to us for whatever they're looking for. And so right now we're preparing for this to be another 2 to 3 months, because we should prepare for a worst case scenario and celebrate if it's, better than that, versus I think what our initial mentality was that it was just going to be over in a couple of weeks. And maybe if we had a different mentality at that time, we might be, a few steps ahead. Every day is critical right now. Like I feel like at the end of the day, like if I haven't achieved enough to set us up enough for tomorrow, I've let my team and my businesses down. And so, every single day is so important right now. You can't take a day off because things are shifting so quickly. And so, we're starting to understand what people are after so much better. So, your question was, how long can this go? We're preparing that it's going to go for the next 2 to 3 months. And if we are, I'd rather over prepare than be unprepared. And if for some reason on, May 1st, the World Health Organization or the provincial government says, you guys have done an amazing job, you're back in action, that'll be, we'll celebrate. But, I have my doubts at this point.
Andrew, for yourself, Reuben and I have discussed on the phone and a bit in person we pontificated a bit on what we thought this could look like, whether it's May 1st or July. What could this look like when things go back to quote unquote normal? It'll be a new normal. I think we've all accepted that. So
Yeah.
for example, say at Say Mercy on that Sunday night where you had the 4 or 5 tables, and that was a bit strange looking at the weeks before that when you would have been arguably busier. Do you feel like the 4 or 5 tables will now be the norm? Are you going to have more space? Are you going to have to adjust your menu? Like, what are you thinking just from a business standpoint and a personal standpoint? What will be different about your concepts and about the hospitality industry as a whole when we come out of this?
Man, that's a huge huge question. I think that's what's on all our minds right now. Pragmatically, I think we're focusing on the day to day. How do I keep the lights on? How do I keep my staff paid? And how do I make sure that the rent check cashes out on May 1st? I don't expect a federal mandate to just kind of come out of the blue where it's like, lights are on, guys, let's party and let's get back to normal. I think it's going to be what would make sense to me, and probably what will happen would be kind of like a staggered kind of, barbershops are allowed to open and coffee shops are allowed to serve to-go coffees from within the building. And I think restaurants are going to be one of those, will still be kind of on the, we're going to be the first to close and the last to open in some ways. I'm aligned with Reuben in the idea here that we're kind of in this now, like this is the new normal. And I will be the most elated, as much as anybody when restaurants get to go back to doing what we're there to do. And at that point, we'll assess day to day. I mean, is it something that, do I want to be, I would love to say that we're going to be hiring back our full-time staff at the same capacity that we were. I would love to say that we're going to be offering our full menu in the same way that we were, but as time marches on, and I think that we've all felt this quite acutely over the last 14 days of doing business, is things are changing so rapidly and so quickly that it's hard to really forecast for all of these unknown variables, I guess would be a word. But we're hoping to go back to full capacity as soon as possible. I have an inclination, and maybe it's the glass half full, but I think that when the fog lifts, I think people are going to be so ecstatic to be out, so happy to be, you know, in an environment of hospitality and in an environment of people, you know, celebrating life and celebrating, you know, the highs and the lows. And that's what we show up to do every day. And if people need a place to go and blow off some steam, I think that we'll be there, ready and waiting.
That's something I find so intriguing about the hospitality industry, and I find so endearing about 99.9% of us that are in it, is this innate desire to just take care of people and look
Sure.
after people and be hospitable. And um, many times, and I'm sure this resonates with you guys as well, like you think about yourself last, you think about the guest first. And I feel like has changed a bit in the last few years, but it's still very prominent with a lot of concepts, and a lot of us in the industry, we're always looking to look after others. And for me, that's a good segue into what you guys, and this is my understanding from afar, what you guys are doing with Staff Meal. And Andrew, I'll let you kind of interject here and
Sure.
describe to myself and listeners what it is. But Reuben's now jumped on it with his team. I'm seeing
That's
it
right.
now populate my social media all over the place, which is great. So give me a sense of where this where this idea comes from,
Sure.
and are you someone who personally like prescribes to the concept of like you give and you get?
Yeah, it kind of was born on that same Monday morning, really, that we closed the doors and called around to the staff. And it was something that, you know, in that week prior, there was times where I was kind of, you know, running the money numbers, running cash flow, thinking about things that we could pivot to if needed be. And then the Monday morning that we were in our meeting and talking about stuff, we were just literally sitting around the table and saying, well, you know, we have two restaurants. We can't offer money, but we can offer sustenance. We have two stocked fridges. We have two, you know, fully viable kitchens to produce food out of. You know, we should be producing at least a meal for our staff every day if we can't pay them through this time. And that snowballed into, well, if we're going to offer food to our staff, is it going to be something that we could maybe offer to other staff that are in quarantine around the city? And maybe there would be people in the city that would be interested in supporting a program like this. And so by Monday at about 3 p.m., we kind of fleshed out the details. That Tuesday, we put a marketplace together on our website, got some copy together, got some photography together, and launched for the Wednesday, the 18th. I guess we'd be there now. The idea here was that we could offer people that are without the means to possibly be out in public, you know, getting groceries, getting stuff to cook, or at least the means that, you know, when the cash flow dries up is in the service industry, you know, there's not a lot left, and we wanted to make sure that our people were taken care of, and that those in the city that were suffering were getting a lifeline.
And what has the response been? What has your interactions been with both people in the industry and just general public as well?
Yeah, overwhelming. It's been really exciting to see. We kind of got that the first few days were this really odd juxtaposition of this really incredible high of almost that feeling of opening a new restaurant, that kind of new brand in the market, new excitement, you know, unknown territory, unknown interest, and people were really flocking towards the positivity around it. And we were really excited that we were able to offer this to people, and it was being responded to in kind. We've gotten, you know, many messages and you know, supportive messages through our colleagues in the industry, as well as the people that are using this service to get meals into their own houses and into their freezers. And the first thing that we wanted to do was make sure that we were able to offer the program out of St. Mercy up on Fraser Street, but then bring in other people around the city because with the social distancing and with this neighborhood hub that we'd created, we knew that there were other places in the city that might need a similar service. And that's where Reuben kind of came to our aid in that regard, and a few other partners around town.
That's so great. I feel like, again, this is something I'm seeing more and more happen. And I talked about it just briefly at the start of the podcast, was this idea of silos. Reuben, are you seeing through this maybe silos that existed before, those walls coming down a bit? Do they still exist? Like, what is the sense in the community? What are conversations like that you're having? Or are you still just talking to the same people you spoke to before this all happened? Or have those walls come down a bit?
Well, first of all, to me, I feel like especially in the independent restaurant community in the city, the support system is as amazing as it is. I feel like everybody has their favorite go-to spots, and I know for my wife and I, we're many of the places that we go are relatively close by because out of convenience, and so that's why we've built this relationship with the crew at Mackenzie Room, just because it's a couple blocks away. But I would say that the coalition that is felt between independent restaurants throughout the city feels like quite strong, which is great. I think this has certainly introduced us and made more apparent what people are up to. I'm paying attention to different restaurants that I might not have before, for sure. And, everybody is reaching out on social media, and, so many people have more time on their hands to pay attention these days that I'm certainly getting a lot of my information from Instagram and Facebook right now and finding out what other people are up to. But I feel like the sense of community and desire to help one another is certainly shining through, and it's fantastic to see.
Yeah, I think that's great. Like I said, I see a ton of it on social media, which I think is great, and something I've been really trying to promote on this podcast and just day to day is like, you should talk to this guy, or this guy should talk to this girl. And I feel like there's so much more of that happening right now, and it's sad at times that it takes something like this to create that. But for me, it's one of those positives that comes out of such a daunting time for us. Holistically. Andrew, for yourself, can you share with anyone else that maybe is an owner out there, or maybe just the general public, again, any of the key learnings, takeaways, like maybe something you didn't realize about your business, some vulnerabilities it had, or the industry as a whole? Like, what have been some key takeaways that you've learned over the last few weeks about this industry and about your business?
It's people are resilient. People are happy to support honest and good product with positive messaging. It's not an industry where you can really rest on your laurels. It's not an industry where anyone's going to come help. It's like, and then when I say that, it's more like governmental. Like, there's not going to be a restaurant bailout. There's not going to be any, we are on our own proverbially, and what we do have is access to the entire population of the city, and we might not be able to reach everybody at every moment of the day, but offering, I think this is a time right now where if I'm being honest, value is going to be paramount. Quality is going to be paramount. People want comfort. They want wholesome product. They don't, we modeled our offerings off of what we would want to have available to us at this time if we were out of work, which is we've been in this industry for a long time. I rode the lows of 2008 crash in Toronto. I was out of work for the better part of a year, and I remember how that felt, and I know that it's an important time to be offering curated products. Just because you're a chef, it doesn't mean you can't cook a mac and cheese and nail it. And just because you're a restaurant that was seeing an $85 check average doesn't mean you can't sell something for $5. I think it's a time right now where people are going to want to see some value in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think it's really going to force it's kind of basically the cream's going to rise to the top, if you will, through this. And I think people are really going to be demanding that. And I think it's a good thing, and something I know that Reuben and I have discussed, and something I keep kind of pounding in all my messaging is, as a population, especially in North America, we need to start paying more for the food that we eat when we're sitting down at restaurants like St. Mercy or like
Sure.
Bellegarde. And there's that misconception that it isn't that expensive, but it actually is. And food costs, as you
Sure.
guys know, keep going up. But there's that kind of that glass ceiling where certain people won't spend $85 on a steak. Like
Right.
they may spend 60, might spend 45, but probably not 80. But for this to be a viable business, for us to be able to retain good talent and maybe, get through times like this, we need to have a bit more of that buffer. So I'm wondering, and either of you can field this, could there be a potential where we all come out of this collectively, and mostly the independents, and say, look guys, I've got to add $5 more to that burger. Are you down to do it with me? Like, does it take everyone to do it? Will there be one martyr that does it? Like, what will be the force that is a change here? Because I feel like there needs to be, because like you said, people are going to want value, and I get that, but we also need to educate them and say, like, if you want value, you need to pay for it.
Reuben, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, so Brad and I were having a conversation prior to all of this craziness happening, which was about how we were going to tackle minimum wage as an industry. And, the fact that it's gone up, a few times over the last several years. And so, obviously our labor costs always was the biggest, and it's just bigger than it ever was. And so, we have to get better as operators. We have to get tighter on our cost of goods, but we also have to figure out different ways to keep our margin alive. And oftentimes the solution is pricing. So on one hand, as we were sort of heading back into spring and feeling quite confident about what the weather was going to do for us and how people's spending habits, once the bills from Christmas are taken care of and that sort of thing happens, we were at that time, we were on a really good trajectory in both restaurants. And but I agree with you, Andrew, that now the climate has changed so dramatically that what people are after is value, and it's comfort. And if we can make things in big batches rather than a la carte, maybe we make 100 portions of bolognese sauce, or whatever it happens to be, or a Thai green curry or whatever, and we can do that effectively and somewhat inexpensively, where we can offer meals for $10 or less. That value perception at a time like this is what may earn us our customer back when things go back to whatever normal is going to be. Normal is not going to be what we had before, no matter what. So, Brad, I think my perspective on that has changed a little bit, in the sense that in the time we're in right now, my goal is to provide value and sort of solve the necessity for people versus be focused on pricing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Andrew, do you echo that, or do you have anything else to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are all points that I align with. I think that it's a time right now where we're asking people to take a skill set that they may otherwise be expected to perform in their house via cooking, and give their money to us to do that same thing, to provide a home cooked meal in a with the staff meal program, at least in a $5 to $10 range. Is this a time? Do I feel like there's a ton of value in takeout format of fine dining restaurants? Personally, no, because I think that a lot of that value comes from the environment, the service, the exchange between people and being hosted and being taken care of, and the romance that goes along with that. And frankly, when that's stripped away to a to-go container and an online transaction, I feel like a lot of that majesty has kind of been sucked out of the experience. And as much as I would love to say that I would really like people to support me in this time and still charge a, a $45, $50 check average for to-go experience, I just can't ask that because it's not something that I would find value in myself.
So do you both feel that for us to get there, to increase the price of that burger or that steak or that halibut, it's going to take some time?
I don't know. I mean, I think that the market will decide when we come back. I'm certainly not expecting to come back with anything less than what we were offering when we closed. I think people will be happy to spend money on an experience that is, again, value. Like that for me is a big part of my outlook when I look at the hospitality industry. And so, no, I'm not planning on changing my pricing infrastructures or anything really about the way that we cost out our items. I still think that, in my opinion, my product holds the value that we sell it at. And that's something that I don't think I will ever really be prepared to waver on as much. I do hope that when people come back to the dining scene in Vancouver and around the globe, that they feel like they can indulge in those experiences and feel like the money that they spent is well spent. I do think that people are going to choose a little bit more carefully about where they do spend that money, because I don't think that there's going to be, everything's pointing to somewhat of a recession right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that is. But as you said, I think the cream will rise to the top to some degree. And we will see those places that offer, again, that value really surviving.
Yeah. For Reuben, for yourself, and Andrew, feel free to field this one as well. Have you guys started talking about certain contingencies that you're either putting in place now or will be putting in place just to kind of soften the blow when this happens again? Because it will happen again, whether we will experience it, hopefully not, but this industry and the global will experience, something like this at some point. So are you preparing yourself and your team with some more contingencies as we go through this, if it is, like you said, a June or July back to normal? Will things be different from an operations standpoint, and what will those contingencies be if you have an idea?
I mean, it's challenging for sure. Like, there's not a lot of restaurants out there that operate with, months and months of cash flow contingency to begin with. That's part of the conversation about, are people paying enough for what they get in the first place? And in the 25 years that I've been in this business, we certainly operate on thinner margins now than we did, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and sort of every 5-year increment beyond. So it certainly is more and more challenging. As far as a contingency, I guess what I'm looking at is that through this adversity, I think we're uncovering other areas of opportunity in our business, and I would assume that based on our learnings that we'll see adjustments to how we operate moving forward. And what I mean by that is like, we've never really in either restaurant really pushed the takeout or the home delivery stuff, more because for the most part we would rather our product be eaten at a table in our restaurant because the quality is much better. And as Andrew was saying, it's part of the romance and the guest experience that happens. But we're finding, like, for example, last weekend we did brunch at home for the first time, and we sent people with sous vide eggs, a list of 10 simple instructions, and you put together your brunch. It takes you 10 minutes, but you've got perfectly poached eggs, and there's a little interaction. And we didn't sell a ton of them, I'll be honest, but we got way more love from that and people commenting and posting and that sort of thing. And so that sort of opened up our eyes to the opportunity of these home meal kits from different restaurants that people appreciate, and maybe they can't get to us on a Friday night, but they really are, dying to have Bellegarde big mushroom pate or whatever it happens to be. And maybe there's a little, a little recipe card that allows you to put it together at home. Takes you 10, 15 minutes. You're a little bit interactive. You might learn something new, and you eat restaurant quality food at home. And so we sort of maintain our loyalty that way, but we don't necessarily have people sitting in our restaurants. One of the things that I have concern over is that because of the cost of real estate in our city, we cram as many seats into our spaces as we possibly can. And, Bellegarde and Havana are very similar. There's not a lot of space between, and I'm sure Andrew would say the same about Mackenzie Room and St. Mercy as well. It's like, we have a certain square footage and we're allotted a certain number of seats, and we're going to get every single one of those seats in there. And if people are concerned about social distancing on the other side of this, our floor plans aren't going to work. And that means that our capacity is, compromised dramatically. How heavily, I don't know. But if we are, if our capacity is 70% or 60 or 50% based on sort of a mandated space between tables, and we can only have 40 people seated at a time instead of 70, does the lineup get longer and people get more frustrated? And as a result, they shift into, hey, I really want to eat at Bellegarde tonight. I know I can't, but I'm going to eat Bellegarde at home. And so our contingency is, how open-minded are we to what this new norm might be, and how prepared are we to tackle it? Are we prepared for this to happen again? I suppose the further we get down this path, possibly, if this came up, maybe we don't do a good enough job at it, the government opens things up and everybody blows their brains out all summer and has a great time, and all of a sudden it rolls around again in the fall. Will we know better what to do and like how to swap our business model? On Monday it's this, and on Tuesday we're completely switched back to what we're doing now. Yes. But there's going to be so much more to it than just simply that. As Andrew was saying, the government, while we're not relying on a bailout, it's going to be necessary for a lot of us to make it through to the other side of this. And the unfortunate part is that the dining scene in our cities and what makes up our neighborhoods and our, little pockets of each city is going to be dramatically different. There's no question about it. And so, how do you prepare for that? I don't even know.
Andrew, for yourself, any contingencies you've been batting around with your partners or have already put in place?
Oh man, so much, Reuben, so much going on there. I know. I'm feeling you. Man, like one thing, like definitely day one, I was like whatever happens on the other side of this, like whenever in business, I'm like, I'm going to have a 1 month cash. Like if lights go off for a month, I'll be fine type kind of cash in the bank. Easier said than done, having, been in business now this is kind of going into our 5th year. But it's definitely a lesson. And I think that this is, these are unprecedented times. And I think that this will be kind of one of those moments where we look back in our careers, hopefully much further in our successful careers, saying like, wow, we went through this. And there's going to be a lot of things that we take away from this that will make us better in our industry, better in the hospitality end of things, as well as better businessmen and women. For me, I've always been kind of a one day at a time type person. Plan ahead, hope for the best, plan for the worst, and make sure that at the end of the week, at the end of the month, you're kind of hitting that number, and whatever it takes to get there. You have to be dynamic, you have to be creative, and that's what we got into this industry for to begin with. And frankly, we are in many ways, some ways lucky that we can offer a supplemental product to at least bolster some cash flow, which of course is what we're all lacking so dreadfully right now. Just at least getting $5, 10, $15,000 through the door a week or a month is extremely useful, especially when creditors come calling and such. So yeah, I mean, being able to rely on your intuition and being able to rely on your business partners and the people that surround you to succeed is more important now perhaps than ever. I don't know.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well said.
I want to respect both of your time, so I don't want to keep you much longer. But before I officially let you both go, I wanted to. And this is obviously I didn't forewarn you guys, so feel free to take this opportunity or pass on it. But I wanted to give you both an opportunity just to take a moment to speak to the industry, speak to the general public, any messaging you want to share on behalf of your businesses and your partners, or just from a personal standpoint, anything you want to share with the listeners today.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Oh, I'll take it.
Like I went.
Well, to be honest, we're so thankful. We have a really dedicated group of people that have been supporting the staff meal project at St. Mercy. I know Dachi in Hastings Sunrise has seen a lot of success with the program. Trevor Bird is at Fable over in Kitsilano offering the same program, and Reuben at Bellegarde in the Havana, and the list goes on around the city, and it's really lovely to see people banding together to help our community, to help the people that many of us we've all shut our doors, and we want to still take care of the people that make our businesses run day to day when things aren't so dire. And so I'm really thankful to the community that's kind of been supporting us through all of this. We're really looking forward to getting back to it, as much as we love making soup and mac and cheese, and what we're really looking forward to getting back to service and getting back to hosting and putting on that show that is restaurants. But for now, we're taking it one day at a time with the rest of the population, and we just want everyone to get out of this safely and healthy, and we'll see everyone on the other side.
Like it. Reuben, yourself?
I echo Andrew's comments. We feel super fortunate for the community that we have and the amount of support that we've gotten so far. I think one of the really cool things, and I don't know how much we touched on it, but one of the main things about staff meal is that there's an opportunity to donate meals to those in need. And so I know we've had a huge outpouring there. We're having now people reaching out to us every day asking how they can go about donating. The bank of meals that we're building is growing all the time. The crew that we really want to take care of there is our own staff. And so, if any staff across the city or across the country are listening, for me, making sure our people are taken care of and giving them the opportunity to get back to work as soon as possible is super important. And I know it's hard. And so, don't feel bad about coming and asking for a meal. We would be happy to fire a few meals your way so that that that's not one of the stresses that you need to have over the next several weeks as this thing continues to wear on. But I think the main thing is just the amount of support that we've felt. And we have a takeout window at Havana. People are just coming by. They're not even buying necessarily any meals. They're just donating a few to whoever needs them, and that kind of thing is amazing. And it's fantastic just to see all the different sort of, as you put it, silos that are coming together. Whether it's this one that Mackenzie Room and St. Mercy started, or the other ones in the city, it's pretty impressive to see how people are pivoting, doing their best, and at the same time helping their community, and I think that's amazing to see.
Yeah, well said. I want to take an opportunity to thank you both, not only for your time this evening and sharing intimately the context of your current realities with myself and listeners, but also for what you both do with your partners and with your staff before all of this and now during it. I will be more than happy to do whatever I can do personally, and then with the podcast, to fly your flags and support any and all projects. So from the industry and the general public, I thank you both for sticking it out and finding ways to pivot and not just throwing in the towel. So thank you guys from the bottom of my heart and everyone listening as well. It's a beacon of hope in a time that can be, like I said, daunting and a bit gloomy. So I appreciate that there are positives like what you guys are doing with Staff Meal and just your outlook. So thank you so much for doing what you do day in and day out. And I hope you guys keep on keeping on, because at the end of this, we want to be able to all come together and celebrate and enjoy hospitality the way it should be enjoyed. So thank you again for doing what you do and staying the course through this uncertain time.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Before I let you go officially, if people do want to get involved with Staff Meal, where, how, when? Reuben, you mentioned there's the window at Havana. Andrew, you mentioned there's kind of the marketplace on the St. Mercy website. How are people engaging with this, and how can they help and make a difference as well?
Yeah, so St. Mercy, the website is where we go live on our marketplace every morning at 8 a.m. Many restaurants around the city, Dachi, Fable, Bellegarde, they're offering the same kind of structure. If you would like to get involved, if you have a business, you think that this would be a useful model to use, please send us an email, even to antonio@stmercy.ca or andrew@collectivehospitality.ca, and we'd love to get everybody, as many people involved around the city as possible. Suspended stews are things that you can purchase from each one of our vendors, each one of our partners, I should say. So you can go onto their marketplace daily and donate stews through those windows. And each of our partners have different kind of focuses on where their stews are going, whether it be single parents at home or frontline workers, or something as simple as just getting their staff a meal day to day. It's all really important work. So we really feel fortunate to have everybody on board with us.
Awesome. And Reuben, anything in regards to supporting Bellegarde or Havana, if people want to reach out, how best they engage with you and your team?
Yeah, so kind of slightly different programs at the two restaurants. Havana being in the neighborhood that is, we do have a pickup window there, and we're sort of expanding the menu. So you can come and get tacos, a Cubano sandwich. We have a little Havana rice bowl on the menu, a couple of other things. So you can come and get those things kind of a la carte, or you can also order and or pick up your staff meal orders there. We also, because we are a winery and brewery as well at Bellegarde, we are offering Vancouver winery wine and postmark beer. We also, and then at Bellegarde, we're doing a lot of the work there, but we've done all the pickup at Havana. And so you can find out about us on the best way is really through social media, either on our Instagrams or Facebook. Instagram is at Bellegarde Kitchen. Same on Facebook, or Havana is at Havana Vancouver. And if there's any message that you want to do to reach out, you can reach me directly at Reuben@BellegardeKitchen.com. But probably the best way is just to direct message us through any of our social media outlets.
Awesome. Love it. That's it, guys. You did an amazing job. Thank you so much for, again, making time for myself and the listeners. Thank you, Reuben, for introducing me to Andrew. Andrew, I consider everyone that comes on this podcast a friend. It's like you've been in my restaurant. You sat at my table. So you are now a friend. So anything you need from me, please let me know. I'd be more than happy to help. We will put all the information you guys just shared in our show notes as well. I encourage you guys, if you're listening and you're local in Vancouver, engage with these guys and their teams, help out as much as you can, help the community, help yourselves, and help the reality coming out of this be one that is one we can all celebrate. So I want to say to Reuben and to Andrew, please, you guys stay healthy, stay strong, stay well. And if you guys need anything at all, please reach out at any time. And to the listeners, thank you guys so much for supporting the show. As you know, if it wasn't for you, the show wouldn't exist. So closing, that is Reuben. That is Andrew. I am Brad. This is the Half Dozen Hospitality Podcast. Thank you guys again for tuning in. You know what to do. Until next time, be good and do good. That's it, guys. We're done.
Cheers.
Cheers.